Good evening, councillors and members of the public. Before we commence the meeting, I would like to draw your attention to the fire regulations which are on the screen behind me and the small screen alongside the public gallery. Can you please also ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent? And councillors, can I please remind you to speak directly into the microphone and make sure that your card is pushed firmly into the console. Members of the public, welcome to Waverley's Central Planning Committee. Thank you for taking an interest. As a committee, we understand that the matters under consideration tonight may be emotive, but please be respectful of those around you and on the committee here. Thank you. So now we move to the main items of business. The minutes is item 1. The minutes of the meeting which took place on the 8th of March 2017 have been laid on the table for the last 30 minutes. Are you content that I sign these as a correct record of that meeting? Thank you very much. Have there been any apologies for absence, Amy?
Thank you, Chairman. I've not had any apologies.
Thank you. Have members declared any interest before the meeting?
None before the meeting, Chairman.
Do members have any other non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Jolly good. Have there been any questions received from members of the public, Amy?
Thank you, Chairman. None received.
Relevant updates to government guidance. Peter, I think you'd like to talk us through the 5-year housing supply.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As you say, not legislative update, but it just to do with the housing land supply. And this is the update regarding the council's housing land supply position following a couple of recent appeal decisions, which you have received, will have all received an email from Elizabeth Sims, Head of Planning on, and that's the site at Webham Works, Elstead, and also more recently a site at Backward Point in Newhurst. This is where the inspector concluded that the council was unable to demonstrate an adequate housing supply to meet its need. The two primary reasons for this is the need for the council to identify a 20% buffer over and above the identified requirements, whereas previously we put forward the case that only a 5% buffer was required. This is considered to be required as it was concluded that the council has persistently under-delivered against its housing need. The second reason is that the inspectors both concluded that the council should take a more cautious approach to estimating when new homes will be delivered. So, in effect, when we've got a site that's got planning permission, looking at how quickly that will be built out, and we will realise the numbers of homes on that site. So although the council's housing land supply assessment will be updated in and around April, it is unlikely that on the basis of having to apply that 20% buffer and reconsidering some of the delivery rates, that a 5-year supply will be demonstrated. So this is the starting point for assessing future applications where housing is proposed. It has implications in terms of weight we can give to policies, which members will be aware of in the past when we haven't been able to demonstrate an adequate supply. It's not relevant to the scheme before you tonight, but it was the first point of being able to update the committee on. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it is generally just a factual update for the stage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. Members, have any of you, Andrew, Councillor Bolton, you'd like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Is this 20% buffer generally applied, or is it specific to us as a planning authority?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. In terms of the buffer, the National Planning Practice Guidance sets out what the buffer should be, and it's either 5% if you feel you have met you haven't persistently under-delivered against need, or it says you should apply a 20% buffer if it's considered that you haven't met your need over a certain period. So our argument was, if you go back to sort of 2007 against the lower housing figures, we consistently met that. But when the South East Plan was disappeared and we came forward and we had a significantly higher number housing land supply figure to meet, we haven't met that figure going forward, and it's considered over the sort of last 7 years, most recently we have persistently under-delivered against that, but it's a consistent approach across nationally. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, members. Just a note that in the event of a site inspection being necessary as a result of the application under consideration this evening, this will be held on Monday the 15th of May at a time to be agreed. Now to move on to that application, it's item B1 on the agenda, erection of single-storey rear extension at 90 George Road, Farncombe, GU7 3LX. Tim, would you like to introduce the application to the committee, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, starting off with the location, the application site is number 90 George Road. It's a residential road within the Farncombe area of Godalming. As you can see, outlined in red is the site. They've actually put out, shaded in black, the layout of the proposed single-storey rear extension. To the southwest, the site is number 88, and to the northeast, number 92. This is an aerial photograph taken from our internal mapping system, 2012. This is the site here where the eye is. Proposal will come out here. To note, this is slightly out of date in the sense that neighbouring property number 88 has been subject to extension work since 2012, and you'll be able to see some of them in my site photographs. This is the existing floor plan. It's currently a chalet-style bungalow with some accommodation within the roof. So the layout of the properties here: existing ground floor, kitchen, living room, stairs central to the property. Then first floor, there are some dormer windows on both sides of the dwelling. So here we go, the existing elevations. The existing rear of the property is here, the front and the sides. The proposal is for a 5 metre deep single-storey rear extension here. It would be the full width of the dwelling, 2.4 metres to the eaves and 3 metres high to the parapet ridge height. As you can see, ground floor only, proposed to extend kitchen dining room at the back. This is the proposed elevations. This is the proposed rear elevation, so you can just see this line here, which is the top of the proposed extension, with hipped roof on the sides coming in, with eaves matching the height of the existing, with bifold doors at the back. And you can see from the sides here, that is the side elevation here and here. This shows the proposed block plan. It would take the existing line of the dwelling on this side, which is 1 metre gap to the boundary, and on this side it is 0.2 metres to the boundary. And again, you can see just the design would have a flat roof on the extension, with the sides of the roof coming down. So through some site photographs, that's the existing front elevation of the property. At the rear of the site, as mentioned earlier, that's number 88, where it's had some extension work in 2014, which shows that different to the aerial view. This is the existing rear of the site, so the extension would come here. Looking further back from within the plot, again 5 metres off this elevation, full width, number 88 there. Number 92 here on the right, so the extension would fall in line with this elevation here, coming out 5 metres. Boundary treatments will remain the same. And this is a view from number 92, from the case officer, just to show you, just really a snapshot from the neighbouring plot. That is the end, the southeast corner of the property on the site, so the extension would come out here following that line. So members, in terms of dealing issues with this application, it's within the developed area of Godalming, where in principle extensions to dwellings can be acceptable, subject to design, impact on visual amenity and impact on residential amenity. So the matters of judgment for you this evening are its design and visual impact. Officers are satisfied its overall scale and design is acceptable at the rear of the dwelling. Impact on residential amenity. Officers giving careful consideration to the objection received from number 92 to the northeast. It is acknowledged that the extensions would be visible from this neighbouring property. However, for the reasons set out within the officer's report, officers do not consider it to be materially harmful to the amenities of this neighbouring property. So overall, Chairman, officers recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Members, I open it up to you. Councillor Tom Martin.
Before we get cracking with any debate, I just wonder if I could sort of ask officers a particular question. If this application was subject to used permitted development rights, which I think they could, then they could extend by 4 metres without requiring planning. Is that correct, or have permitted development rights been removed from previous applications? I'm just trying to get an understanding of where we are in terms of the application itself, and whether it's looking at, essentially we're looking at a 1 metre difference, or if this would, if even a 4 metre extension would come for full planning.
I'll let Tim answer that one.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so under the planning history section on page 9, you will see the applicants had first applied under the DW reference, which was what's called a prior approval application for a larger home extension between 4 and 8 metres depth. That actually was refused. The reason being is the property has been extended at 2-storey before, which is about here. I don't think they have the plans on me, but the original bungalow was set further back than that in terms of it's been extended since then, which was the 1988 permission in the history, and so therefore you couldn't put the single-storey extension on the back on top of that, essentially.
If I can come back, okay. So
certainly,
essentially that means that we are looking. That there isn't any other route that they could put something on the back. I'm just trying to understand, because if there was some scope for permitted development, then you're really looking at the balance of the difference in terms of what we're looking at here, which I suspect that there isn't. The planning history is difficult to work out exactly where we were, and I think really the pertinent issue here is, and I think the photograph of the eaves from next door is really the key as to what the impact is on the, keep going, that one is really the key to the impact on the neighbours, and I guess it's a little bit difficult from this photograph to work out actually where it was taken from, what level it was taken from. Was the photographer relatively low to the ground, because it does depend on how you view the picture, but really, I guess we're looking at what impact this would have on the neighbouring properties. I guess on the other side, there's less of an impact because they've already extended with a conservatory to around about the same sort of level in terms of the boundary line. But I'd be interested to know what other members think.
Thank you. Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess someone's worked out whether this would affect the sunlight of 92, have they, please?
Tim, would you like to address that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So we haven't had a full, obviously, a daylight sunlight assessment with the application, but we have had regard to the proximity of the extension, distance from the boundary, its overall height. It is, you could say, directly south from the neighbouring property. If you look at the location plan, where the north is directly north, as on that plan, you see it's directly to the south. We consider the most, if there'll be some very limited impact on the very late afternoon sunlight as the sun comes round, mainly on the garden space of number 92. So that, in combination with its height, it's 1 metre off the boundary, we consider it not to be harmful in that respect. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Byam.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I think, how far do we continue to go with flat roof extensions? I think it's, well, I can only describe it as bland or ugly to continue in this route. Next door, of course, have extended with a a conservatory with an interesting roof structure. And it doesn't appear to me it's gone anywhere near as far back as that, but it's difficult to tell from the photographs. But I think this type of extension just does nothing for the area whatsoever, and is not friendly to their neighbours either. So I personally don't feel very happy with it, and I wouldn't feel happy with that type of extension, I don't think, in any area particularly. And of course, it's such close proximity to each other, it does affect the neighbours more.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Martin.
Thank you. I don't take the same view as Councillor Byam on flat roof extensions, I have to say. If it was a second story flat roof extension, I would be very unhappy. But I think a single story is something which we're normally reasonably happy about. I think this is tricky because the impact on number 92 is fairly great. And if I lived in number 92, I'd be making some substantial complaints about an extension of this sort. However, if the previous roof extension had not been put in, we would be allowing this under permitted development, I suspect. So I think it's very marginal. I have to say, in spite of the impact on number 92, for me, it's not substantially enough to justify voting against it, but I accept it is a bit marginal, and I'd be interested to hear what others have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, and then Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I do share Councillor Byam's view on flat top extensions. They are characterless so far as I'm concerned. I know that's a subjective judgment. And this doesn't look particularly attractive, just a box bolted onto the existing house, which has some interesting roof lines. Certainly the interior is going to give a lot of amenity to the residents, and one can readily understand that extra space is going to be particularly useful to them. It is good on the one hand that there are neither windows on the left hand side or the right hand side, which could give a possible lack of it could give sort of look-in properties to from 92 and from 88, isn't it, I think. But this is just one thing amongst all the things that need to receive our judgment, and therefore I cannot see it is reasonable for us to deny the officer's overall comments and conclusions, and so therefore I feel I must support this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you go back to the photograph that shows the sort of grey, that one? I presume that sort of grey brick is part of number 90, although it looks as though it's the sort of wall almost as far out as the conservatory of 88, in which case number 90 have had a wall that high on their garden. You know, if the sun's coming that way, if it was blocking out light, they wouldn't have done it, which would be exactly the same sort of height, apart from the little ridge bits, although it's much longer on the other side. But again, on the flat roofs, I overlook four little Victorian cottages, and they have all got those extensions with that little ridge bit, eaves, half eaves, and they're in the conservation area in Chiddingfold, and I have to say they are very attractive. They've obviously been done years and years ago, but they aren't flat roofs, because you look at them with the little tile hanging, or so on a flat roof thing, I'm quite happy with that. It is the extra length for number 92 that is, because already they've got that wall, the side of the house, and it is a long way, and if it does block light, but then we actually don't really... I'm undecided, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I refer to the location plan on page 8? If you have a look at the garden of number 90 and number 88, it is quite long and it goes quite a long way back. And that is all in the southeast, which will attract lots of sunshine, daylight in the afternoon. If you look at the garden of number 92, it is much shorter. And the impact, the light impact of that extension to number 90 will be very significant in the afternoon and block the pleasant sunlight of much of the garden of number 92. And I can understand number 92's objection because they are losing a significant proportion of their lit garden. And therefore I will vote against this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Officers, is it possible from the drawings to give us a dimension from the back of the rear wall of 92 to the what will be the rear wall of the proposed single-storey extension? Have you got that somewhere?
Thank you, Chairman. We'll just take it off the plans. If you just give us one moment. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. It's about 7.8 metres from the rear elevation of the existing elevation of that property and the full extent of the extension.
Thank you. My concern was that our residential extensions supplementary planning guidance indicates that we should be aware of a 45-degree daylight line from the window of a neighbour, and I understand that if you draw that line it is clipped by the existing two-storey extension, but I think this is going to make it a lot more. And I've seen many single-storey extensions where the corners have been knocked off at 45 degrees to accommodate that. I just wondered if you'd like to comment on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've looked at that assessment. I mean, it would have an impact on that 45-degree line. Sorry, I should face my microphone. The point, in fact, is that the existing extension that has been added to the property is more significant and harmful, and that is already there. Adding what is a single-storey addition, whilst there is conflict, given that it's off the boundary, it's not significant in height, and it has got that false pitch which has been referred to, or small sort of pitch there and parapet style. Whilst there is that conflict, we have discretion to consider whether that impact would be significant over and above the existing situation. And because of the low scale of it, we don't think it would do over and above the existing position. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, any more comments? So we move to the recommendation, which is that permission be granted subject to conditions 1 to 3 and informative 1 on pages 16 to 17 of our agenda. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant? And those against?
It's 2, Chairman.
Thank you, members. The recommendation to grant is agreed. There are no items to consider in the exempt session, so that concludes this meeting for this evening. Thank you very much, members.